Welcome to another edition of the Texas Tech Hoop Scoop. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, we're back on campus here in Lubbock at Texas Tech. You know, it seems like now already, in one respect, seems like yesterday we were doing this in Minneapolis, but then it also seems like almost like a year ago, or like it was a dream that it really didn't happen. But it was just over what? It was about a little over 2 weeks ago. Last time we did one of these, we were in Minneapolis on the eve of the national championship. I think things are starting to. I think we're starting to accept the reality of what a great run it was and disappointing end. But I guess, how are you, man? You're back in Lubbock. How things kind of that story you did about the last play, man. It was hard I had to read it before publishing it. I was like, what is Joe doing to us? Just ripping the Band-Aid off. If you haven't read it, it completely breaks down that 3-point bucket by DeAndre Hunter, who tied the game there at the end and sent it to overtime.
Yeah, it was just, I wrote that because I felt like that was it was the most important single possession in Texas Tech basketball history.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like it needed probably a story of its own just to focus on that. And so that's why I did it. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody or anything. And it hurt me just as bad as anybody else, and then, the way I didn't realize what sort of an impact maybe psychologically that would have as I was writing it. But then later, after it was posted, that was the first time I went back and read it. And I read it, and I damn near broke down and cried almost when I read that thing. And it was mainly because that last part about, we heard about everybody saying how sorry they were. I'm sorry, everybody apologizing to one another. And, I think that did stem from that final possession mainly, and it was painful. But, listen, that's in the past. It was a glorious, glorious season. These guys, they're still hurting somewhat from this. And, they're never going to get over it completely. But eventually they're going to look back and what they're going to remember is the great stuff and the marvelous, marvelous season that they had. And that's what we should all really hang on to.
Yeah, the truth is, basically what you just said is that a lot of I've been blessed to get to interview Hall of Fame athletes kind of in the twilight of their life, or guys that have retired maybe a decade earlier. And when you ask them what they remember most, even guys, I'm talking about Hall of Fame players, guys who won Super Bowls, guys who won national championships, what they remember are the losses, the almost, just because I think it's, first off, that's human nature, but also it's in your competitive nature. If you're a Hall of Famer or that kind of level athlete, you're very competitive, and it's always going to be the failures, not those tremendous triumphs. And it was a triumphant season. It was the best season in Texas Tech, one of the best seasons in Texas Tech sports history. It was the best season in the two major sports in men's sports, by far. I mean, not even close. It was a triumph, but still, that happened. And it was a painful moment. We had Matt Mooney on our radio show, The Rockin' Pregame, on Friday, and you could tell he's not even close to being over. He said he's buddies with Kirk Heinrich, who's from the South Dakota area, and Kirk Heinrich, of course, was a star for Kansas and was an NBA player for a long time, and he told him, look, it's going to sting for a while. Eventually, you'll be able to look back and appreciate the season for what it was, but you're going to have to learn to get over it and let it go, or if not, it'll eat you up. So I thought that was really interesting insight. And, look, now we look ahead. I can't help, when you sent me that story, I was like, I'm not looking at this. So I just, put it away for a day because I was like, I don't want it. I'm still not ready. I was like, all right. I felt ultimately like you did. This needs to be looked at. It is an important play. And it was, of course, well done. It was done by the mighty Joe. So it obviously was worth publication. It was a good story. But now I want to move forward. Look, Matt Mooney, grad transfer, great season, tremendous player, one of the best Red Raider players ever gone. Tariq Owens, same thing, exact same thing. What a major impact those two guys made. Jarrett Culver has now publicly announced that he's leaving, which we all expected. Expected to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. He's gone. I mean, just those three guys alone, boom, boom, boom. Brandon Francis, your sixth man, he's been a leader and a big voice on your team for the whole time Chris Beard's been here, to be honest. He's gone. I mean, you go to Andrew Sorrells announced that he's transferring. Noren Sodiasi, wow, what a team leader. And let's be honest, he was a big part of their success this year, not only in the season, but big time in the tournament. Some of those games, like against Buffalo, it's hard to imagine Tech really dominating the way they did. So huge losses, there is no doubt. Kayvon Moore, Much talked about for good reason. One of the biggest signees in program history. He finally announced that he's transferring. He has a family situation that is kind of calling him closer to home. So look, you've lost a lot from the roster. But that being said, a lot coming back, Joe, or a lot that you're adding, and a lot coming back with Moretti. You go down the line, Kyler Edwards, Corprew, and then some guys they've been developing. I guess where are you at as far as this another year of a huge roster turnover, just like the year before?
Yeah, just like you said, that's the thing. This is deja vu all over again.
Right.
You know, I mean, there were people who thought the sky was falling after last year in the Elite Eight. Zaire Smith goes pro. You lose all those seniors, Keenan Evans.
Justin.
Exactly. All those guys, the core, Naeem Stevenson, the core of that team completely eviscerated, completely gone. And, well, how on earth could they possibly ever get back to being close to that again after sustaining those sorts of losses? Well, we saw what happened, right? Okay, so, well, we know now. We do not necessarily have to panic.
They truly reload.
Yes, that's it.
Rebuild.
That's it. I mean, Tech is not a blue blood basketball program, but they are playing and performing at a blue blood level right now. I mean, they are just like a Duke or a North Carolina or a Kentucky or a Kansas in the way that they just keep on keeping on. And those programs are constantly losing people to the NBA, one and done and so forth and whatnot. So Tech is now in that same sort of a mold right now. And yes, they lose a lot of players, but they got people coming back, and the incoming recruiting class, which looks like it's probably going to finish off pretty strongly, is going to put Tech back in contention again, and Tech's going to have another great year next year.
I mean, the key, let's face it, we're all being honest, the key is if Chris Beard is here or not. That's it. I mean, you look at between the 2017-18 season and 2018-19 season, we talk about all the players, but he lost big-time assistant coaches too. I mean, Ogden, that was a huge part of what he was big, integral part of the recruiting, their development. Al Pinkins, same thing. I mean, he was huge. I mean, I don't think you get Tariq without Al Pinkins being here. And of course, he leaves soon after Tariq gets here, but obviously it worked out for everybody involved. Matter of fact, Tariq's father jumped on Twitter on one of the stories I wrote about, T.J. Holyfield being in town and saying, no reason to visit anywhere else. This is where you want to go, which I thought was really cool. He didn't have to do that, but he talked about how publicly stated basically how Tech has treated both him, his son, his family, and made them feel at home. And why would you choose anywhere else but Texas Tech? And I think that's kind of where the Red Raiders are now. We mentioned the class. It's top 15 in the country right now, number 2 in the Big 12, which I never thought I would say about a Tech football or basketball recruiting class. But now that Chris Beard's here, I mean, anything is possible. You look at Jemias Ramsey, I can go down the list, Khalid Thomas, man, help me out, Terrence Shannon, all those guys are 4 stars. McCullough, who's already on campus, who, by the way, I'm gonna have a story I'm working on right now, but when Matt Mooney was on the show, he talked about Kevin McCullough and that he's been rehabbing, he's been injured, he hadn't really been able to go full go, but he's there now, and that they actually played one-on-one. And McCullough had been wanting to play him one-on-one, but hadn't been all the way there. And Matt just said, why don't you get right and get full strength and then challenge me, and we'll see what happens. Man, Matt said, look, this kid, he's a really good shooter, a really good scorer, and he can do a lot of different things in terms of very good on-the-ball defender, makes his teammates better. He was really impressed. He said it took everything he had to beat Kevin, who's just a freshman, right? He's 6'6" freshman, all right, with that length and everything, and his offensive versatility. That's pretty exciting. And then he also talked about Andre Savrasov, who may be the least talked about guy in the class, him and Chewy, the 7-footer, walking double-double 7-footer, raw talent. But he said, Andre, who's been, in the program, on campus, developing, Matt even said he's put on a lot of weight already, that he said he's legit 6'8", and that offensively, he said he thinks we're really going to be surprised at how good he is, how advanced he is. He even talked about how don't be surprised if you see them, Coach Beard, running him off a lot of screens to get him open because he's such a deadly offensive player. That's exciting. 6'8" Russian, freaking, being that, explosive offensively that they're running him off screens, and then he's already putting on weight and developing in this program. I mean, I am really excited and think that, I said this before last season, that I thought this upcoming season they could be more talented than the year before, and it sounded like I was being a homer, but I really think that, again, that especially depending on how they finish out this class, or if they add grad transfers, which Matt said, look, they are. He said they're working on adding veteran talent right now. But you add more talent to what they're already bringing in, what's coming back, I think it may be even more talented than last year, Joe. Is that too crazy of a statement or a stretch?
No, it's not. I think you're exactly right. And, next year's team is going to look very different from this previous team.
Yeah.
People are concerned, and I understand this, that, well, what about inside, the big guys? What about the experienced bigs and so forth and so on? And, Tech isn't going to bring in another Tariq Owens.
No, he's special.
He isn't. He's a special guy, and Tech isn't going to be able to find anybody quite like him. There's not going to be a Lawrence Odiasi on the roster next year either. Okay, but what you've got is you have so much size that is developing at the guard positions. Look, you got. Listen, I think Shannon is going to be really, really good, and he's kind of listed as a small forward.
Right.
That's a guy who can play a legitimate off-guard position as well. Okay, and now he's not necessarily a devastating shooter, but he's an off-guard who can get into the paint. And then he's 6'6",
right.
Same exact size as Kevin McCullough, who, in my opinion, is a true point guard if he chooses to be.
Right.
And I know that Beard doesn't go by right. But I'm just talking to you bums and me, a couple of bum. We don't know what we're talking about compared to Coach Beard. But for us primitive types, okay, we still kind of talk about point guards and things like that. And
primary ball
McCullough,
handler.
he's a primary. That's a mouthful, but that's kind of what he is. If you watch him play, he really is very unselfish, gets everybody else involved. And so what I'm getting at here is you could have like two legitimate 6'6" guards on the court at the same time. A Khalid Thomas, who is 6'9", and is dynamite on the perimeter. As a stone shooter. And then you bring in a guy like Savrasov as well, who's 6'8", he can really stroke it from out there. And you got all these big guys on the perimeter who can really score. And then you bring in a Jamias Ramsey, who is a hardcore 6'4" guy who can really get into the paint and then kick out and distribute to all those guys. And man,
and D up. They got to play defense. He's known as a hard-nosed, on-the-ball defender.
Exactly. And this isn't even really talking about all the talent coming back, and like a Davy Moretti, Moretti's going to be one of the premier players in the Big 12. Yeah. Edwards is making the leaps and bounds towards the end of the season. Hey, how can you not be excited?
We obviously are. We could go on and on. We could talk for hours till we run out of memory card here and battery, but we are obviously excited. Look, bottom line is getting Chris Beard's new contract, which by the time of taping this hasn't formally been announced, but you can take it from me, it's a happening thing. It's all but been formally announced, and I think Red River fans will, for the most part, there's going to be people who are going to complain no matter what, but I think they're going to be excited that Chris Beard's going to be here for a long time. And man, I can't wait to see what happens next year and on and on. How many more journeys we have here of covering this, amazing basketball program. What's turned into, like you said, one of the elites in the country under Chris Beard. But Mighty Joe, great stuff from you as always. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.